Good evening, I'm Ces Orenia Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Sean Yao.
The big stories tonight. President Bongbong Marcos does not see any need to roll out fuel subsidies at the moment as world oil prices easing following the ceasefire between Israel and Iran.
As truce holds in the Middle East, authorities set their sights on a more permanent solution to Tehran and Tel Aviv's conflict, a peace agreement.
Back here at home, Vice President Sara Duterte turns to fighting words again as she gives her recent observations about the ICC and President Marcos.
Ang adjustment na ginawa ngayong week, nanggaling na ho yan sa previous 2 weeks.
Ang sinasabi namin, hindi ayuda, subsidy, pag tumaas ang presyo. Kung di tumaas ang presyo ng langis, then there's no need for that.
World oil prices are reacting positively to the announcement of a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Fuel is selling for even less than their going rate before the Middle East conflict flared up. Yesterday, Tuesday, the global benchmark Brent crude fell to $67.65 per barrel at U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement of a truce. This is from a high of $79 this month. News of a renewed missile attack after the ceasefire deadline, however, pushed prices slightly higher to $69 per barrel, which is still the lowest since June 12. Here at home, the Energy Department is still waiting on oil companies to decide whether to push through with the second installment of the big-time price hike this week. Gasoline prices are scheduled to increase by 1 peso and 75 centavos tomorrow, while diesel and kerosene will be more expensive by more than 2 pesos per liter. The DOE, however, says that if cost of world oil continues to fall, we might see a possible rollback in fuel prices next week.
Ang adjustment na ginawa ngayong week, nanggaling na ho yan sa previous 2 weeks. So nangyari na ho yan yung mga increases. So hindi na ho, medyo mahirap kung hindi nila makolekt yung ganong adjustment. Kasi yun ho'y nadaanan na nila. Ngayon, hintayin natin ng Wednesday to Friday dahil hindi ho tayo sigurado kung matutuloy. Pero kung tuloy-tuloy ang pagbaba, sa tingin ko pala ngayon, malakihan din ang baba.
The ongoing Israel-Iran conflict has had little to no effect on the Philippines. President Bongbong Marcos gave this assessment after meeting his economic team on the current tensions in the Middle East. Marcos, however, noted that this still depends on the movement of world oil prices.
Kita natin that the effect on the economy should be manageable. May effect siyempre kahit paano pag tumaas ang presyo ng langis. Even before our meeting, nag-announce na ng ceasefire, pati Amerika pumasok na rin, nag-announce sila ng ceasefire. Yung presyo ng langis bumalik sa dati. So far, there's no effect. So there is no significant effect on the economy.
As world oil prices dip, the president has also shelved the planned release of fuel subsidies. Government was supposed to provide aid to PUV operators and drivers after fuel prices surged this week.
Kung hindi nagbago yung presyo, then we do the same like before. Ang sinasabi namin, hindi ayuda, subsidy, pag tumaas ang presyo. Kung di tumaas ang presyo ng langis, then there's no need for that.
And as we reported earlier, the ceasefire in the Middle East is holding. Question is, will peace come next after the still brand new and fragile truce? Mon Gualvez reports.
On the 12th day, the exchange of missiles between Israel and Iran has finally come to a halt as both parties agreed to a ceasefire brokered by the United States. But before this, Tehran and Tel Aviv first traded accusations that the other party violated the truce. The back and forth has so infuriated U.S. President Donald Trump, he dropped a bomb of his own, the F-bomb.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs. I'm not happy with Israel. When I say, okay, now you have 12 hours you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. I'm not happy with Iran either. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the doing. Do you understand that?
But a few hours after, everyone and everything's calmer. Tel Aviv has lifted its state of emergency and Tehran said it has fired the last of its missiles. Trump's Middle East envoy says the truce seems to be holding and could eventually move forward to something more permanent. Steve Witkoff says conversations pointing to peace are promising, hoping that, quote, we can have a long-term peace agreement that resurrects Iran. In almost 2 weeks of intense air fights, Iran's health ministry counted more than 600 dead from the conflict. Israel, for its part, is reporting a death toll of 28. Meantime, satellite images show the extent of the damage in Iran's nuclear facilities after these were attacked by the US over the weekend. On social media, US President Trump even said Iran will never be able to rebuild their nuclear facilities. But US intelligence assessment revealed their forces were not able to sufficiently incapacitate Iran's nuclear arsenal in Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. Sources said the bombing merely set back the atomic site's capability by a few months, sealing off entrances with destruction only limited to above-ground structures. And there's a great probability that the uranium stock had not been depleted. Iran had earlier insisted that they're just conducting nuclear research for civilian energy production. But America, Israel, and global experts highly doubt this. And from the Middle East to the Philippines, 31 OFWs are back home after requesting to be repatriated. Many of the evacuees were from Israel, but there are those too from Iran, Jordan, Palestine, and Qatar. They are the first batch of repatriated OFWs from the Middle East. The Foreign Affairs Department says the next group of Filipinos set for repatriation will still have a choice to fly out or stay in the Middle East with the ceasefire already in effect. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
Despite the situation apparently getting better in Israel and Iran, DFA says repatriation shall continue. Let's get updates from Yusek Ed De Vega of the Department of Foreign Affairs. So, good evening, Yusek, and welcome to the big story.
Welcome. I don't see you, but you can see me.
Yes, we can see you. We can see you very clearly. Well, is it still alert level 3 that's up?
Yes, it's alert level 3 for both Israel and Iran because, well, we need the ambassadors' assessments. We need the ambassadors, both ambassadors' formal recommendations. We always said that the alert levels are subject to periodic review, could be lowered, could be raised, depending on the local situation. And of course, our ambassadors are in the ears on the ground. There is this ceasefire, which is good news. Our DFA has issued a statement welcoming it. However, the fact is, as people say, it's still a fragile ceasefire. And there is still a need to make sure that it holds. So we're still under alert level 3. And even without the formal announcement of alert level 3, anybody who wants to go home will be assisted. In other words, whether or not there's an alert level, if some people want to go home, we will assist them to go home. We're still encouraging people to go home. We want to make sure that it's a more permanent ceasefire, that it will last. However, we are certainly open to lowering it. Israel clearly, according to our ambassador, is achieving some state of normalcy even in their defense establishment. And Iran, the same thing. So we're open, depending on the recommendations of the ambassadors.
So should you lower the alert level, will our OFW still be entitled to the financial assistance and other packages that's being offered as of now under alert level 3?
Yes, because, and you may consult other offices like the DMW, OWA, DSWD, and DOH, Congress, and other offices or officials who have been offering these assistance packages. Whether there's an alert level or not, whenever we repatriate en masse, whenever we repatriate Filipinos, they do receive this. The DMW and OWA always have some financial assistance for them and reintegration program. So yes, I just said that whether or not there is an alert level, people who need to go home. We're not talking about people who need a vacation. No, we're talking about people who want
Yes.
to go home.
Yes.
Will be assisted. Yes, that's a guarantee.
Have the numbers decreased? We understand that upwards of 300 have indicated that they want to be repatriated, but have they changed their minds?
Well, I haven't received the latest info because we are ahead by a few hours. Our Ambassador Eileen Mendiola in Tel Aviv will eventually submit the latest numbers. The number of around 300 indicates the numbers of those who have signed in for the voluntary repatriation. And however, despite that, if you ask them, all right, how many are ready to leave now? Even before the ceasefire, there were only about 50 who said they're ready to leave at any moment. So we don't expect the numbers to rise. We hope they will rise in case the ceasefire does not hold. Even in the case of the 50, I believe the news report reported future batches. Well, here's the thing. There's supposed to be a second batch passing through Jordan. We already had the first one arriving last night. Delayed, but they arrived. With no less than a DMW secretary with them. There's supposed to be a second batch being planned through Jordan, but right now it's on hold, according to our ambassadors in Tel Aviv and Amman, possibly because it was supposed to be a fairly big batch, around 50, including tourists. But apparently it's put on hold, maybe because the Filipinos are having second thoughts, or because the airport in Tel Aviv is now open, even for limited flights. That means they may prefer to just go home via Israel instead of going to Jordan. So we'll update you on that. So, but that's a sign. That's a sign that there is less interest. So eventually we may lower the alert level altogether. Pero tuloy pa rin. Whoever wants to go home will be assisted.
What would trigger, Yusek, the lowering of the alert level from 3 to 2?
The number one consideration is that our people on the ground recommend it. Now, alert level 2 or restricted phase only limits our deployment, meaning we can't deploy new workers. We can have those who already were employed return. For example, those who have had a contract before the announcement alert level 2, which began in October 2003 with the Israeli-Hamas conflict. If before that they were already there, they can come back. They can go back. But what's the difference? Alert level 2 is restricted because there's a threat. There poses a threat. The situation is not completely safe, but there's no actual skirmish. Now, alert level 3, it means that there's already risk to life and limb, and it's best to go home. And now, when you have missiles flying in both directions, there is such a risk. But alert level 4, or mandatory repatriation, would require a total breakdown of the country, meaning we don't even want Filipinos to be there. So not only must the Filipinos there already go home, but we won't certainly want Filipinos to remain there. In other words, or to go there. So, but that's rare. We've had that in Sudan, and of course, up to now, in Gaza. Because, well, I think the Gaza situation is self-explanatory. So neither country was actually like that. And the majority of the Filipinos, vast majority of Filipinos, and of course, opted to stay despite some fears. Remember, some time ago, just very recently, the media was asking us, why don't you go right away to mandatory? Now, that would have been a rash decision, given that the countries were still operational, meaning the government still worked, there were still actually some establishments open and so forth. But now that we have the ceasefire, there's the question, kailan bababa? So we can't be rash and make quick decisions either way. The ceasefire has only been operational for a little over 24 hours. We'd like to see it longer before we lower it. And, well, it doesn't have to take long. Maybe within the next week or next several days, we'll lower it. Certainly, Iran used to be in alert level 1, which is precautionary phase, meaning advising Filipinos to take caution, while Israel was already on alert level 2. We may lower it eventually, but stay tuned for developments.
But, Yusek, it's really good that the first batch of OFWs was able to return safely here in the Philippines. But they had a press con last night, and some of them were recounting their traumatic experience during the war and the tensions that they felt. So aside from financial assistance, how will the DMW, the DFA, will be assisting them as well? And is there a mechanism for them to go back to Israel? Because as we all know, nandun kasi din yung buhay po talaga nila, yung mga trabaho din po nila.
Opo. Ito po, the first question, hindi lang DFA, DMW nandun. Nandun DOH, nandun DSWD. Inalok sila ng health services, psychosocial treatment. Yes, so meron yan. It's standard, so ganon. And the reintegration process of the DMW would include that. By the way, they'll be assisted with the local governments to see if there are jobs available according to Secretary Kakdag and the new OWA administrator. Well, if they want to go abroad, tignan mo, kumahanap ng trabaho. Now, we know they love the conditions in Israel. They're paid very well. I would say, pag bumalik na tayo sa alert level 2, well, they're already there. So, they could go back because this would not be new deployment if their employers would still have them. So, that's the mechanism when we go down to alert level 2.
But they're still entitled to keep that financial assistance o kailangan bang ibalik yan?
Siguro naman hindi sisingilin. Well, you could ask Secretary Takdak, siguro naman hindi niya kukunin ulit.
Huwag naman sana.
Maybe ganito ang compromise. Hindi naman pwede ba babalik doon. Each time, magiging business na yan. Okay.
Hindi naman rin
They go
syempre.
15 months and get 150,000 pesos,
Yeah.
they go back there.
Yeah.
I think it's clear it's a one-shot deal.
Kung wais ka, pwede mong gawin yon kung wais ka. But, let's not begrudge them the fact that hindi naman nila na-foresee na magkaka-ceasefire. Hindi po ba?
One more thing. The DMW has custody over them now, no? Our ambassadors did, but personally, I have not met them. I'm pretty sure, though, the majority of them are recent arrivals to Israel, meaning last 2 years, last 3 years lang, or shortly before 2023. In other words, hindi pa veteran. Because veterans in Israel, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, they're so used to this. And in the daily office, parang, okay, there's a missile there. Yeah. I myself have experienced that. I've been to Israel. And after a while, you just accept it. Of course, we're God-fearing and a bit fatalistic. So kasama rin yun na kung oras mo. There have been no Filipino casualties either in Israel or Iran. We still have at least one, Filipino who's in critical condition, Filipina actually, babae, in the hospital, but no others. So the vast number of Filipino veterans there are saying, I'm going to stay here a lot. Pero yung itong mga bagito to, others who may want to go home, well, tourists, obviously they want to go home. Mga recent arrivals, we remember the 21 government officials, nakauwi na. And then scholars, we have, there's always these scholars taking agricultural program studies there for about 6 months to a year. So they're not veterans. I mean, hindi sila matagal na nandun, and they would naturally be concerned, lalo na for them, maybe the bomb shelters are more difficult to reach because they're in the fields, no? So, unlike yung mga nasa urban areas, any building has a bomb shelter, as an underground shelter or bunker. So, the Mashav, which is the Israeli agency in charge of scholarships, is taking care of our scholars, so ensuring their safety.
Yusek, Yusek, may mga ganun ba? Mga pilgrims, tourists, scholars na nag-express na gusto nilang umuwi? And kasi we were only hearing about the OFWs apart from yung
Meron.
government officials. Yak, what can you, mga ilan po, more or less?
There was about 10 to a dozen, pero out of that, mga 3 lang umuwi. 4 umuwi. Iba ng isip. So maybe because of the ceasefire, or maybe because, well, mangyari dyan, yung iba, kusang look, there were 2 tourists who went on their own. Hindi kami nag-repatriation. Sorry, they crossed to Amman on their own. Hindi namin dinala. They crossed to Amman on their own. They had their tickets pa uwi. Ang ginawa lang ng embassy natin sa Amman, sinundo sila para dalhin sa airport. Or we didn't spend money for them because they had a ticket. So there have been a handful of tourists. By the way, may I take advantage of the opportunity to say, well, of course, under the alert level 3, we're somewhat obviously discouraging people to go there, no? It's not a travel ban per se, but, well, common sense, no? Lalo na sarado airspace. But now, in Israel, not yet Tehran, but Israel, open ang airspace, so there might be Filipinos wanting to go back. We're going to tell you whether it's alert level 3, alert level 2, alert level 1, or no alert level. Just exercise caution because this is Israel. I'm pretty sure those government officials had no expectations that they would be caught in some very big crossfire. And neither did the OFWs who were interviewed last night. So, right, you know, when we go back to alert level 2, certainly we're not going to say don't travel. By the way, we don't need a visa to travel to Israel. There's not many countries who don't require a visa for Filipinos, kasama doon ng Israel. So that's one reason why, you know, it's an attractive destination, especially for example, pilgrims, no, for those undergoing Christian pilgrimages. So I'm sure magkakaroon naman ng advertisements, see the Holy Land, ganyan. Di ba? I hope they wait muna 1 month muna.
Yes.
1 month muna, tingnan muna na sigurado
1 month
ceasefire.
would be a good time frame to
Yes.
assess the situation.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I think the priests and others who are managing these religious pilgrimages, they are worth it. I mean, you see Jerusalem, you see Nazareth again. They know that while Filipinos would like to go to heaven and see God, they might not want to see God right now. Right now. Pray to Him. So be safe, mga kababayan.
Oh, Yusek, Israel has more Filipinos than Iran. And there's been a lot of
more.
news about them, updates. Sabi nyo nga po, Yusek, no, some of them are rethinking their decision on whether they will be coming home or staying. But what's the situation in Iran, Yusek? Kasi mga Pilipino doon, mga deeply rooted po talaga. More than 20 years na nandun, which is quite different also from, nasabi nyo nga po, doon sa Israel.
At saka, yung mga Filipinos, by and large, they're with other Filipinos sa Israel. Filipinos in Iran are almost all with Iranian families, meaning Filipinas married to Iranians. I think I've been heard saying this. There were a lot of Iranians decades ago, and those of a certain generation will remember there were many Iranians studying medicine, dentistry, maybe engineering, architecture in the Philippines, in Philippine universities. And some of them, a lot of them, went home not just with diplomas, but with marriage certificates, with wives. And now they're there. And under Iranian law, if you're a foreign woman, whether you know it or not, you're a foreign woman, you married Iranian, and you're in Iran, you're automatically Iranian citizen. So going back to that situation, very few as well wanted to go home. Sabi ng ating ambassador, aside from a few of them, there's only a few, like 20 or so, and some indicated to go home. And some will go home this Friday, about 6 of them. And we will wait kung meron pa in the future. There were about 60 dual nationals who wanted to go home, but I'm pretty sure they will change their minds now, no? What's the situation in Iran? Also, according to our ambassador, Robert Manalo, in Tehran, there's some normalcy coming back. Like There's no more gas queues. People are going because during the time that they were being bombarded in Israel, Iranians could not leave Iran. And that included Filipinos naman. Of course, if their husbands don't go, they will not go. So they just transferred to probinsya. They just left Iran. But they're now coming back, according to our ambassador. There's more life in the city. Some commercial establishments are reopening. So it's essentially going back to normalcy. And may I say therefore, sa mga nakikinig na may kamag-anak sa Israel o sa Iran, magandang balita to. Ibig sabihin, kung may mga kamag-anak kayo doon, baka nahihirapan ng kumontak sa inyo. Lalo na sa Iran where internet it's spot, So, at least, alam namin, walang casualties, walang deaths, at bumabalik na sa normal ang situation. So, medyo the worst is past. So, ang kailangan lang pagkasalan na ganito talaga at hindi yung bukas nagbabakbakan na naman.
All right, we will have to end it there. Thank you for joining the big story, DFA Undersecretary Ed De Vega.
We're just going to take a quick break, but coming up, Vice President Sara Duterte resumes her criticism of the Marcos administration and the ICC too. That's after prosecutors moved to have her father's request for temporary freedom rejected. That story and more when the big story returns. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the big story. Vice President Sara Duterte blasted International Criminal Court prosecutors for blocking her father's request for interim release. She insisted that former President Rodrigo Duterte never wielded his influence against witnesses in alleged extrajudicial killings during the war on drugs. The VP added her power over Digong's ICC case is negligible. The ICC prosecution team wants Duterte's bid for temporary freedom rejected on several grounds, including his camp's refusal to accept the legitimacy of ICC proceedings. Mr. Duterte is facing charges of crimes against humanity and has been detained in The Hague since March.
In addition, the vice president criticized the Marcos administration for questioning her travels. Sara explained that she still worked even while overseas. And on the day of President Bongbong Marcos' State of the Nation address, VP Duterte said she might go to South Korea for a personal trip. After that, she is off to Kuwait in August for another Free Duterte rally.
Hindi ko alam kung sinasadya nila na ayaw intindihin o talagang bobo lang talaga yung nasa administrasyon. Nilalagay namin doon personal to differentiate it from official.
Meanwhile, the Senate Impeachment Court finally received this afternoon 2 pleadings filed by the House prosecution team. The documents contained explanations on why the lower chamber did not violate any law in the verified impeachment complaint that it submitted, and questions on the remand of the articles of impeachment to the House. The prosecution also resubmitted an entry of appearance in response to criticism that the action was done while the impeachment court was not yet convened. The House team did not submit a reply to the Vice President's answer ad cautelam, requesting to dismiss the impeachment. Impeachment Court Presiding Officer Cheese Escudero gave the lower house until noon of June 30 to reply. But Escudero clarified that the impeachment court cannot act on this until July 28, as there's still one more requirement that needs to be satisfied.
Dalawa yung compliance na hinihiling na impeachment court sa Kamara. Yung isa ay pwedeng mabigay ng 19th Congress. Yan yung patunay na hindi sila lumabag sa one-year ban, pinapaliwanag na hindi sila lumabag dito. At pangalawa, yung patuloy na kagustuhan na ipursige pa rin yung kaso mula sa 20th Congress. Hindi kami pwede schedule agad hanggat una, wala pa yung prosecutors. Pangalawa, wala pa yung compliance in one shape or another.
And now let's discuss the arguments raised by ICC prosecutors in their bid to block the interim release appeal of former President Rodrigo Duterte. And joining us tonight is ICC accredited lawyer Gilbert Andres. Good evening to you, attorney, and welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, and good evening to all the viewers of The Big Story.
Well, before we discuss the case, may we get you to react to the statement made by the Vice President that her influence on the ICC is negligible?
Actually, if you remember, the ICC pretrial chamber already referred to the considerable power of Mr. Duterte when the pretrial chamber issued the arrest warrant. So I think that was just a statement that was reiterated by the pretrial chamber when it filed its views opposing the application for interim release. So I think what the Office of the Prosecutor is pointing out is the considerable power and influence of Mr. Duterte as well as of the other members of the Duterte family.
The Vice President, the Congressman, and the Vice Mayor included. Attorney, have you been asked by the OPCV to also give your comment on the request by Mr. Duterte for interim release?
I think this is the portion where I can neither confirm nor deny, because any meetings or any discussions with certain units of the ICC is confidential, but I can say that the victims want their views and concerns to be actually conveyed to the pretrial chamber, and we are doing that. We're conveying it to the pretrial chamber.
So tell us about the process. If not the councils, it's this office of the victims
Public counsel.
council for victims that will convey to the court. You use them as your conduit to convey the concerns of the victims. Is that correct, attorney?
Yes, because as of now, it's technically the OPCV, which was appointed for the meantime to represent the victims. Because there's also a separate process wherein the pretrial chamber will actually approve the common legal representative for victims. So that is still to be conducted. It's still ongoing. That's why the OPCV as of now is representing the victims. But having said that, we also are conveying our views and concerns to the pretrial chamber. So that's the process of now. And the OPCV has until this Friday to actually file the views and concerns on behalf of the victims.
All right. And will the defense be able to have another comment, or is this submitted for decision by the chamber, by the judges?
I think says this is already submitted for resolution by the pretrial chamber, unless the defense opts to file with leave to give their rebuttal. But I think that's not anymore necessary because the issues have already been intertwined and they have already been exhausted. And including, of course, if the OPCB will file definitely this Friday or earlier than that.
Okay, well, also today, Justice Secretary Boying Remulla said that they will be assisting the witnesses that are still here in the Philippines with their, flights and travel all the way to The Hague for the hearing. How are you guys taking this, and are you coordinating with the DOJ to get this done?
Well, that's a good development, Sean, and we welcome that. But as to the specific witnesses, it's really the Office of the Prosecutor that has the primary duty to present the witnesses. In fact, they already indicated in their disclosures that they will present in person two witnesses, which is very unique because, in fact, the trend in the pretrial chamber confirmation of charges is that it's only affidavits of witnesses, but there will be two in-person witnesses who will be presented by the prosecution and whose names have not yet been identified or been redacted, so we still have to know who are those two specific in-person witnesses.
Is it safe to assume that they're already there, though? Because I think based on our understanding na meron namang mga witnesses that are already there in Europe, there in The Hague, and will this be, you're talking about the July 1 disclosure of evidence hearing, right?
Yes, as well as the September 23, the eventual confirmation of charges. Is it safe to presume? We cannot really know for sure because it's redacted.
I'd like to pick up on
you're
your
trying to catch me on that one.
on your comment that this is unusual. So why did the court deem this necessary?
Okay. Not really unusual, but in a sense, it's not really the usual process. That's not really the usual process since it's a confirmation of charges. So it's expedited proceedings. So it's really presentation of affidavits. But of course, the prosecution has that prosecutorial discretion to present in-person witnesses. So, and they have opted to do that, and they have two in-person witnesses. And also, just to clarify, it's for the part of the victims, it's not really the duty of the victims to present the witnesses, but it's really to give to the pretrial chamber the harm that they have suffered and to apply for that for participation in the proceedings.
Okay, but attorney, with the DOJ officially confirming that they are somewhat cooperating with the ICC, they are willing to fly out some of the witnesses. How will that work from a legal standpoint? I mean, what obligations does the Philippines still have to the ICC, considering that we already withdrew from the Rome Statute?
That's a good question because, in fact, I have been saying maybe 5 years before that the Philippines has residual obligations. It has still remaining obligations to cooperate with the ICC under Article 127 of the Rome Statute. In fact, the withdrawal does not actually negate that residual obligation to cooperate.
So kasama po yun doon, attorney, yung pagkalipad ng mga witnesses can fall under residual obligations.
Yes, kasama po yan. In fact, it's for the state party to define what will be the metes and bounds of its cooperation. If it's flying witnesses, then so be it. If it's surrendering a person who's being indicted before the ICC, so be it. So it's part of it's the interplay of both the residual obligation under the Rome Statute and the sovereign functions of a state.
Could rejoining the ICC not be far behind?
Well, I really hope that this administration will rejoin the ICC because it will, in fact, try to reiterate, not just in the Philippines, but in the Southeast Asian region and in the Asian region, that there's really no room for impunity here in the Philippines.
Attorney, we understand you are at The Hague.
I am in the Netherlands. I will not just disclose. We're in the Netherlands.
Okay.
But I'm in the Netherlands.
Kasi tatanungin ko sana, kamusta yung
park?
sitwasyon sa labas? Are there still continued vigils? Do you have any idea? Ginawa ka namin kayong reporter.
I cannot really confirm with personal knowledge as to any of those whereabouts.
Okay. One clarification, attorney, yung sinasabi niyo magpapresent ngayong prosecution ng dalawang witness, malalaman ba ng publiko kung sino sila? I mean, in the interest of their safety, or sa korte na lang yon and we won't know their identities?
I think doon na lang sa presentation doon sa confirmation of charges. But I will add a colatilia, there are also facility for a redacted even an in-camera presentation of witnesses. Meaning to say, baka hindi po, there's a possibility na baka hindi siya i-live or hindi siya i-audio feed, kasi we know that there's an audio feed, in fact there's a video feed, like the one that happened last March, but it's also a possibility na hindi gawin yon or i-request na hindi gawin yon, kundi in camera lang. Only those persons who are physically present in the court will be allowed to hear and see those two in-person witnesses. So let's see, because just remember, this is an international criminal court, international crimes are charged, and there's really a heightened risk of security.
We had asked this of Attorney Conti last night because, and we'd like to ask you as well, Attorney, do you feel your fears assuaged by the position of the prosecutor? Because early on, before this was filed, there were fears that there was a done deal between the defense and the prosecution team.
Oh, definitely. This assuage any of our fears or anxious thoughts. And maybe this is really part of the process. So this is really an educational, pedagogical moment for the Filipino people, and especially for the victims' families, as we learn the processes of the ICC. There's that possibility for an interim release to be filed, an application to be filed, and there's really an opportunity for both the prosecution and the victims to file their case. And it's really up to the pretrial chamber as a judicial body to decide under its sound discretion whether or not to grant that interim release. But we hope that they will really deny that application for interim release.
Was the filing of the defense counsel misleading?
Well, what I can say is, based on the views filed by the OTP, is that there was an initial understanding that any agreement or any understanding will be with respect to a specific state. And whichever that state is, we also don't know because it's also redacted.
Right.
And the one that was indicated in the interim release application was a different state from the one that they discussed. So maybe that's what the OTP is really pointing out.
Okay. But in terms of like yung talks, because we also interviewed earlier si Attorney Butuyan, and he said normal naman talaga na mag-usap yung lawyers with the prosecution, lawyers of the defense rather.
Yes, there's nothing unusual with that because we are lawyers. We also talk to the other side if there's a case. That's really not unusual. But maybe the initial understanding they also have that understanding. Maybe there's something that went beyond it. Also, number two, as pointed out by the prosecution, they cannot really just agree in advance to any pleading that has not yet been filed. They have to read it and they have to confirm that what they understood before was in the pleading that was submitted eventually. So there can be no agreement in advance for any pleading that has not yet been filed.
So you feel like ganun lang yung lumabas? Because as to Cesar's question, a lot of people felt like misled, di ba? Parang ba't nila sinabi yun? Ano, fake news ba? Bluffing? It's not a poker game.
Was it a tactic?
Yeah.
Yes, well, that's very unfortunate, and I hope that there can be a light that's shed on this. But really, what's really binding, what's really should be looked at is what's written in the pleading. It's not just what were discussed.
Well, as you mentioned, Attorney, a lot of the information was redacted. Kasama na po dyan yung medical condition ng former president. So do you think when the court weighs in on this request for interim release, age and medical condition won't be a deciding factor?
Yes, you're right on that. It should not be a deciding factor because if we look at Article 58, health is not even one of the factors that's being considered. And in fact, in terms of the logistics, the ICC has the medical facilities, they have at least the medical personnel that they can coordinate with in terms of the medical needs of anyone who's suspect or who's being before the custody of the ICC. So I don't think that should be a primordial factor to be considered.
Follow-up question on the OPCV choosing the lawyer to represent the families and the victims. How is that process? May jockeying ba yan among you? Paano po ba gagawing equitable ang parang, ang choice?
Just to clarify, says it's not really the OPCV that we will appoint. It's really the pretrial chamber, but there's a specific office under the registry. That's the VPRS, victim.
VPRS.
VPRS, yes.
Okay.
It's the one that will actually give its views on the lawyer to be appointed, and it's eventually the pretrial chamber that will appoint.
What's the criteria?
Yeah, like, is it better if fellow Filipino, ganon, or may chance na mapunta sa foreign lawyer?
With the criteria, they will also consider the choice, the voluntary choice of the victims. And the second criteria, of course, that lawyer has to be admitted to the ICC list of counsel. So victim's choice will play a primordial factor in the appointment of the common legal representative for victims.
You all get along naman, I would presume.
Of course, we get
Well, we thank you for your time wherever you are in the Netherlands. Thank you so much. That was ICC accredited lawyer Gilbert Andres from a place tucked away in the Netherlands. Thank you, sir.
Right, we're going to be pausing for another quick break for now, but when we return, another Filipino is chosen to hold a very powerful position in the Vatican. The details next. Keep it here on One News.
and Detection Group.
Regardless po kung sino po ang involved dito, sibilyan, mataas na tao at even yung mga kabako po natin, wala po tayong sasantuhin po dito. So antayin po natin yung full disclosure po nitong lumabas po na possible witness.
Over in Cebu, motorists can expect higher toll rates in the Cebu-Cordova Link Expressway or CCLEX. To soften the blow on motorists, the increase will be implemented in phases. Starting July 1, discounted rates will take effect. 65 pesos for Class 1M vehicles or two-wheelers, 100 pesos for Class 1 including big bikes and light vehicles, and 200 pesos for Class 2 vehicles such as light trucks, buses, and high-roof vans. It will be 300 pesos for Class 3 or heavy trucks and trailers. The actual approved toll fees are around 7 to 21 pesos higher. The CCLEX management says toll rates will be adjusted every 2 years to help recover the additional construction costs incurred during the pandemic and Super Typhoon Odette. CCLEX, currently the longest bridge in the country at 8.9 kilometers, is operated by Metro Pacific Tollways, a company owned by MediaQuest Holdings Chairman Manny V. Pangilinan. One News is a sister company of MediaQuest.
And another Filipino makes history at the Vatican, being appointed to a quite powerful post by no less than Pope Leo XIV. That is our big picture tonight. Former Education Secretary Armin Luistro, who is now the newest member of the Dicastery for the Institutes of Consecrated Life and the Societies of Apostolic Life. He currently serves as Superior General of the De La Salle Brothers, also known as the Brothers of Christian Schools. He is the first Asian to hold this key post. Brother Armin joins 18 others in the dicastery, which oversees matters related to secular institutes, congregations, and religious orders. In a post, La Salle Global congratulated Luistro on his, quote, new mission. Luistro was DepEd Secretary to the late President Noynoy Aquino, the administration that first implemented the K-12 program.
Wow, congratulations to Brother Armin.
I know. Namuti na rin yung hair ni Brother Armin. I haven't seen him in so long, and no wonder he wasn't in the photos from yesterday's 4th death anniversary of Pinoy.
Oh, right. Yeah. Because he's already there. Malapit na siya sa kalangitan.
Sa room pa lang naman.
I didn't mean
Closer to the Lord.
Sige. Oo nga.
Seat.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Oh my gosh.
All right, and on that note, that's it for the big story this Wednesday evening. Thank you so much for watching.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
We're back here tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. We'll see you then. Have a good night, everyone.
Until then, coming up next, may nag-wait lang dyan, pero kayo na ang susunod. Play-by-play with Andre Felix and Cheska Liton-Cala. What are we waiting for, Andre?
Inumuya pa akong chicken wings eh.
Ay, nako!
Akala ko napilit ka kumain ni Cheska ng atis.
Hindi.
I told him that I gave atis and he said si Pawi kakain niya.
Yeah. Kanya na lang yun.
Automatic.
Pwede ba si Booker doon?
No.
Maraming buto-buto.
Sa laman, yung laman pwede. Fruits are good for dogs.
That's true.
Ah, really?
Okay, we can
Yeah,
try.
pwede sa kanya?
Okay. Balitaan na tayo ni Booker kung
tomorrow.
type niya or hindi.
At saka sana mapilit ka ng aso mo na subukan din.
Ha?
Wala siyang narinig.
Sorry, nagchichikan kami dito.
Akala ko nag-chicken nuggets ka pa rin.
Chicken wings.
Chicken wings.
Your favorite.
Yes. Okay, thank you guys. Check.
Mga 4 times a month.
Di naman?
Once a week.
Once a week.
O sige, ayun.
But thank you once again to the ladies of the big story. Great show as always. Thank you to Seth, to Sean, and to Pauline. On our show tonight, we got several big trades in the NBA check involving stars like Kristaps Porzingis, Jordan Poole, and CJ McCollum, all changing new teams. Plus, updates from the start of the semifinals of the PBA Philippine Cup.
And we look at Team Liquid Philippines' preparations for the Mobile Legends Bang Bang event of the Esports World Cup next month.
I'm Andre Felix.
And I'm Cheska Liton-Cala.
And here's tonight's play-by-play.